Hey there, everybody. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and I'm feeling fine on the 69th episode of the Weekly Ratchet. Yeah, if I look back now, those turns seem to last forever, but if I had a chance, I'd still want to be there because that was the best game of my life. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. Hope you've all had a good week and a half, as it is, of getting to play some games with family and or friends. How you doing? How's everybody doing? Are you doing okay? I'm hanging in there. This week has been so insanely busy. Just personal stuff, just stuff going on. Well, a little, I was going to say nothing bad, a little bad. I had some pretty decent dental surgery yesterday. I was going to record the Ratchet yesterday, Tuesday afternoon. I was in so much pain that I actually had to cancel a game night last minute. I had Civolution set up behind me, and I just knew that I was not going to be able to teach and get through that heavy game with the way that I felt. I was just annoyed at everything, and I was like, I'm going to lose it, and I just don't want to do that to my friend. So I'm feeling a little better today. I'm not out of the fire yet. We'll see if other things have to happen before I go to GenCon next week, which would be bad. I really hope things settle down. Anyways, so it's a little late in the week. It's midweek, it's Wednesday. I don't really see any more game playing happening this week because I'm trying to get ready to leave for GenCon next week. So I'm going to make this 69th episode kind of bridge the gap between last week and next week. So the next episode won't come out until after GenCon. And I'll say now that episode I'm not going to do question of the week. Probably because I'm intending, I would not be surprised if I have a bunch of games played, probably a bunch of new games to chat about. There's obviously going to be a lot going on. So I'm going to postpone the question of the week, which I will ask this episode for episode 71. All right. So now you know. There's been a lot going on, though. I have been really busy. I've been in this mindset lately where if I've got a few minutes between a meeting, or in my case, doctor's appointments and vet appointments, I go up and I shoot a little bit of video. And if I've got a little bit of time here, I go and I shoot some B-roll. We finish dinner. We're not doing anything at night. I'm back over here and I'm filming, or I was up last night many times back and forth editing and throwing in sound effects. I got the Pergola review out yesterday. It's a neat game. It's very light. It doesn't have a lot of staying power, but it's a very, very pretty game, and it's very, very chill. So if you get a chance, please check out that review. And I'm going to go ahead and mention this. I have been working on the preview video and some other content for Beasts and Diplomacy. I've talked about this one. This is the one that uses the generative AI art. And I did something that I have never done before. And I'll tease it only here on the channel for the folks who watch this. I did my first ever interview with a game designer. I chatted with Mike Cribble, designer of this game. We talked. He mostly talked. I was so sort of focused on the lighting and the microphone and the camera and holding my view. Where am I going to cut? Is this going to sound good? Is it recording? All that stuff that I didn't really talk that much. I had some notes, but I mostly just kind of let him go. I've definitely learned a couple lessons from that. I think it's a good conversation. I think it'll be interesting with folks. We did talk a good bit about the path that he took with the art here. I think he raises some very, very good points in defense of his need to go with generative art because of budget and cost, and him being a one-man operation and getting picked up by a very, very, very small publisher with a very, very small budget, even for marketing and advertising, never mind for art direction. So I think it's interesting, and I hope that folks will check it out, have a little bit of an open mind if need be, and just kind of listen to what the guy has to say. I've been having fun getting that edited. Like I said, it's been a very, very unique experience for me, and lots of lessons learned out of that. Other than that, I'm going to try and get one more review out on the Dice Tower before I go to GenCon, so that my name's a little fresh in the lineup in case I'm a part of the Dice Tower Awards like I was 2 years ago. That was unexpected, so I kind of had to throw something together quickly for it. Anyways, I could go on a lot more, but there is a bunch of stuff to chat about here this week, so let's go ahead and kick things off. All right, just a couple of new games here. Actually, only one new actual game. This is, I can't believe I bought this. This is Monumental. This is the exploration version. There are actually 3 versions of this game. There's exploration, there's trade, and espionage, I believe is the 3rd. I did get all 3. The other 2 are over at the house. I forgot to bring them over. These are streamlined editions of the original Monumental game, which was this kind of dudes on a map with sort of a deck building element. I say sort of because I didn't really get a lot of a deck building feel out of it. But anyway, it used this 3x3 sort of matrix grid of cards, and on your turn you activated, I believe, a row and a column. Or maybe it was just a row or a column. I actually can't quite remember. And you would trigger the effects of those cards. And the game was really, really popular. And I don't know why, because I never really loved it. The deck building aspect, like I said, was kind of there. Triggering off that grid was fine. Although I don't think that, I just didn't understand it, which is quite possibly the case. It just didn't quite click with me. I wasn't able to really build some like strong, efficient turns. I didn't get that feeling of progression of a stronger deck that I usually like to get out of deck building games. Anyways, I was listening to the Dice Tower review of this game, and apparently this is the original game. This is what the original designer Matthew Dunstan had come up with, and then Funforge Games, it is Funforge, right? Yes, Funforge Games, who produced, well, this and the previous version, decided to blow it up with the miniatures and that big map, and it just never really quite worked. It just wasn't a lot of fun. So I've gotten rid of that copy. I got these through Prime Day, honestly, for quite a cheap price a couple weeks back. And so, yeah, I'm thinking I'll get to this here at some point. I'd like to see if this is the streamlined version that maybe I can kind of get into a little bit better without the big map. And the rulebook wasn't all that great. Just a lot of stuff with that game didn't quite land. Anyways, that's Monumental. Now, the next 2 are they're just expansions. This is an expansion. Okay? Whew. This is Zoo Tycoon, the board game New Shores expansion to Zoo Tycoon. The Zoo Tycoon box is the same size. This is from what I understand, very, very heavyweight game trying to build and manage a zoo. It's very, very parallel theme-wise to Ark Nova, but gameplay is very, very different. You're actually breeding animals. You've got to actually manage the pens. There's, I believe, a lot more to this. There's a lot more of sort of the business side of things. This is actually based on the Zoo Tycoon video game. In fact, it even has the Xbox logo here on the back of this. I never played the base game. The problem was that when the base game came out, it was almost immediately blasted for just having a terrible rule book, being very, very hard to figure out. And I thought, I ain't got time for that. I'll come back later. I thought the expansion was going to have the revised rulebook. It doesn't. There is a revised rulebook. I'm going to have to try and find a way to get it printed or see if I can order it. I haven't gotten around to that. But I do need to play this. And in fact, I've been talking to my friends Katie and Greg of the Meeple Society. I think I'm going to bring at least the base game down with me to the Dice Tower retreat in August, late August, I believe, to see if we can try it out while we're hanging out there at the retreat. Because I'm pretty sure they don't have this in the library because it was a mess of a game. But I've heard that it's good. I've heard if you can get into it, it's a very interesting game. It's very, very heavy. I think this thing's rated over a 4 in complexity on Board Game Geek. So I want to try it out. I do love business management games. I would love more of a roller coaster tycoon type game than a Zoo Tycoon, but I can see this being a lot easier to translate into a board game format than, of course, some big fancy 3D roller coaster, right? Anyways, yeah, this is Zoo Tycoon. God, it's heavy. Ugh. Okay, this is also an expansion. This is Scarface 1920 Bloody Business. This is the expansion to Scarface 1920. Scarface is a 1920s Chicago-based Prohibition-era themed game with a lot of gameplay reminiscent of Western legends. So, open world. On your turn, you've got maybe like 3 actions that you can trigger. It is also a deck builder, but in a unique sense because you'll have a hand of cards. You're going to choose a couple of those cards to play. They're not only multi-use cards that they have different symbols and different abilities and different strengths and whatever else, but you're going to use those cards in multiple ways on the same turn. So you're going to take an action that's going to utilize some of the features, some of the symbols on that card, and I can't remember what all they are, but there's like strength and there's, I think, influence. Those are the main items that you'll use to take actions on the main board. But then the cards may also give you some skills that you can trigger, sometimes needing other cards to be there. So you're kind of setting up you're almost like you're setting up like a little group of your hitmen or whatever, and sending them out to do stuff and sort of using their abilities for that turn. And then you go in your discard pile and you prepare for your next turn. There's also a boss. You have this idea that you have your own sort of mob boss, and you can level up your mafia, your family. I'm not very familiar with this theme, but anyways, you can level up your family, and that levels up your boss. And whenever you play the boss card, you're able to do some fairly powerful stuff, especially once that boss levels up. And there's just all kinds of stuff, right? There's cops that you're trying to kind of buy off. You're trying to produce and sell alcohol and guns. You've got a crime track that you're trying to sort of not get up too high, or trying not to get too much heat on you, and so you're trying to manage your position on that heat track, and a bunch more. And then the expansion comes and just dumps a bunch more on the table, adds a whole nother sideboard, adds this idea of, okay, well, now when you're recruiting people, the people that don't get recruited kind of gain value until someone finally picks them up, but in a different way than what we typically see, right? We see those cards, games like Canvas, games like Acropolis, where, okay, if you keep passing up a card, you stack just resources on it. And this is kind of like that, but it's multiple stuff, right? You're going to get a variety of different resources, maybe even money, points, businesses, who knows, whatever else. And so when you finally go to recruit that person, you may get a whole bunch of just goods dumped in your lap, which is great. It adds an election. There is a Republican and a Democrat candidate. Both have end of game scoring bonuses, if you will. And so throughout the game, you're going to collect vote chips. And then at the end of the game, you're going to cast all your votes for one of those candidates. And whoever has the most votes, those end game scoring triggers go into effect, and the other one doesn't. And I think that's pretty neat. That's a really neat idea. I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like that in a game where you're literally voting on the end game triggers in a secret vote kind of a thing. Anyways, I read all the rules for this. I figured out how to play it because I was going to play with some buddies over the weekend. I brought everything for this, and I say everything. This is the box. It also came with 2 new crime families. This is probably really loud in the microphone. I apologize. Came with 2 new families to play as. It came with some more money components. These are the nicest money pieces I've ever seen. They're these plastic banded dollar bills and 100 bills and 20s, and they're awesome. So it came with a bunch more of those, some extra little minis, some extra little card packs, some, of course, replacement cards for the original game, all that kind of good stuff. I hope I can try this out. I've actually got... it is scheduled to be played at RiverCon. There's a convention coming up here in Richmond in November, and I've got to sign up right now for folks to be able to play that. So I'm hoping I can check this out. It's mean. I'll mention that real quick. It can be a mean game, and we all know that's not exactly my thing, but I still think it's a neat idea. I really like the theme and the components and the way that it plays, the deck building kind of stuff. So I am looking forward to checking that out. That's it for new games. We've got some questions of the week to answer. Can't believe I left these in the shot. I guess like it's my first day. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That's what happens when I'm shooting B-roll. Time for question of the week. Last week, well, things got a little silly. I asked you to tell me your thoughts on what you look for when you're going on to YouTube. What kind of content do you look for? What attracts you to maybe a particular YouTube video or a YouTube content creator? The whole inspiration for it was that I made a comment last week that I had just noticed that one of my videos in the Dice Tower got, I think, 15,000 views, while another video on the same game, from No Pun Included, got 141,000 views, even though they have less than third as many viewers. And I thought it was interesting. And I realized, even as I came in to do the second version of asking that question, I kind of did a late video edit for those of you who remember. And I realized even then that this is still coming across as, why is nobody watching me? And that wasn't the point. That wasn't the idea. I promise. I wasn't fishing for compliments. I wasn't like lamenting the lack of success of my. It was none of that. Honestly, I swear that it wasn't that. But some people still kind of took it that way, and I get it. And so I got a lot of comments, I should say, sort of offering support and being complimentary. And I appreciate all that. I really do. I thank all of you for those kind words. I promise I wasn't fishing for it. I really, really wasn't. And to sort of prove it, I'm going to gloss over some of those comments in these answers, because I did want to talk about the YouTube content, the algorithm, the variety of content out there. It wasn't just me going, why isn't no one watching me? So I promise. Anyways, that all being said, let's start off with Brandon Graham, who had some interesting points to raise in terms of comparing the two channels I mentioned, no pun included, and the Dice Tower, and then chatted about suggestions for improving the searchability of the videos on this channel. And Brandon said a lot there, and I'm just interested in time and space. I wasn't going to put it all in here, but raised some really interesting comments and sort of talking about, just the sheer volume of clicks that Dice Tower gets versus no pun included, but how no pun included makes very, very honed content. And I agree. I mean, their stuff is really, really good, sometimes a little too long even to keep my interest. But I really like his editing. I like his just style. I like their humor. I still think that here in America, we just cannot quite do humor like the good old Brits can. So anyways, that was all interesting stuff, and it was some food for thought. Brandon also made a comment about sort of adding the names of games to the comments, and I think that's a good idea. I think that's something that I do need to work on. It was actually suggested within the first couple of episodes of the Ratchet to put the games in the thumbnail, because I used to just have a white background and all I was doing was editing the number. And I thought, that'll make a really, really easy thumbnail to pop out every week. But then, it just gets really, really boring and you're not inspired to click on it because it looks like the same thing every week. So I did adopt that idea. And I think that putting the names in there is a good idea as well. I've also been trying to mess with hashtags, even putting in hashtags like shut up and sit down, Dice Tower, no pun included. Hey, I know how to do this. So anyways, we'll see how that works out. Thank you for that feedback. Eli Kurtz said they like to watch longer narrative videos while they're working and actively avoid clickbaity titles. And that was one thing I kind of touched upon was, you can have a very, very a clickbaity title, right? Is this the worst game ever? That kind of stuff. And I even avoid that myself. I try to make the titles funny, honestly. I think the Pergola review is a good example of that. But there's also a lot of research out there about just how effective clickbait can be for a whole host of reasons on a whole host of networks. There's actually a channel I've recently discovered called Veritasium, which has nothing to do with board games. It's all science and technology. Some of it's even way over my head, but he's done a video recently on clickbait. I need to watch it. I haven't gotten to that yet. But even I'm kind of curious what I might learn from that. Teshra said he likes to look for unique or interesting topics related to a game or gaming in general. He mentioned channels like No Pun Included and Shut Up and Sit Down for their unique, deep, humorous, and even philosophical content. I think that's my problem. I'm just not smart enough for philosophical content. I watched some of that stuff. No Pun Included did a video a while back on arousal, which was a weird topic at first, kind of like, do I want to click on this? But it was really fascinating. He had graphs and charts, and not only was he referencing sort of a study, but then completely debunked the study in that same video. It was really, really fascinating to watch. But it was talking about, as gamers, we are at most highest level of excitement when we are opening and unpacking a game box. Like, we're excited when we order the game. We're excited when the game shows up. When we're opening it, we're off the charts. And then it plummets, especially through reading the rule book, figuring out how to play. Into that first play, it starts to pick up. And then, of course, if the game never meets expectations, it won't get that high. And then it will never get as high as our excitement was when we were first opening that box. It was fascinating. I just feel like I don't have time for all that kind of research. I also don't feel like every game warrants its own philosophical review or analysis. You can't do that all the time. because games are just the same sometimes, right? So, I mean, I agree. It's neat stuff. Like I said, I love the humor. I do try to get a little deep into the mechanisms of some games. And I actually realized, partially through some of these comments and also chatting with some folks offline separately, that I realized I've pulled a little bit away from that just very recently. I've kind of fallen into this rut of, here's the game, here's what I think about the game, and here's how you play the game, here's what I think about it at the end. In fact, Teshra even made a comment about reviews that don't have timestamps and how they're, that's terrible. And I've kind of thought, well, I think if a review is really good, you're engaged in it the whole time. There's not necessarily an idea of, well, I want to jump back to here where he taught the rule. Well, we don't do that in a review anyways. Or I want to go to the scores. Well, I've talked about why I don't really use scores. But what I've tried to do is keep a review sort of flowing between thought process and how does this feel to play, to the next rule, to thought process of that rule, to impressions of this, and well, how does this really look, and how do the components really feel, and I didn't mention this crazy rule. And I kind of like to keep that flow of thoughts and emotions where I think that time stamping it doesn't really make sense. And that's kind of the approach that I've realized I've gotten away from, and I'm trying to get back into. I think you'll see it with the Pergola review. I think you're going to see it with the Beast and Diplomacy review as well, or preview, and trying to keep it a dynamic conversation, not just intro, rules, thoughts, the end, if that makes sense. Jeremy Brooks said production quality is his top priority, with variety of content being second. He expressed an interest in interactive live streams, top 10s, and Q&A videos. Yeah, streams is tricky. I have not, I know the buttons are there, right? In fact, my new camera has a live stream capability. You can literally just hit a button. I don't know, I guess you connect it to your accounts. I have no freaking idea. And they can just live stream right off the camera. And I just don't see that happening. I do try to do the top 10s. And I think, it's one of those things where I still believe that Tom Vassell invented the board game top 10. That's maybe not true, but I think he was doing it before anyone else did it. And now I kind of feel like we all do it because it gets the clicks. I mean, you're right, it gets the clicks. Part of me kind of feels like I'm ripping off an idea, which granted, that's the internet, but still, I try to feather those. I try to do it all the time because it seems too easy. But on the same token, I'm probably leaving some reviewers on the table instead of bringing them in. So I got to consider that. Red Panda Games said what will typically draw him in is a thumbnail showing a game he's interested in and a title suggesting a unique or surprising impression. That's clickbait, baby. That's that, and I think you're right. Like, that's what works. If I'm scrolling through and I see a video and it's, is this the best game ever made? Well, of course it's not. You know that it's going to go a different direction, but I'm probably still going to give it a click. Now, per Jeremy's comment, if I give a click and it's someone sitting in front of a grainy camera in the wall of games, and I can't, he doesn't have a microphone, I'm probably not going to stay on that video, but it probably still got my click. So I hear you. Weston said the presenter is key and that he prefers content that is well produced, well organized, and well spoken. Weston, I want to say, hey, it was nice meeting you. Thanks for stopping by. Now, I'm just kidding. I like to think I'm well produced. I am not well organized, but that's why I script all my stuff for my actual reviews. And well spoken is only because it takes me 50 takes sometimes to get sentences out. And the outtakes of Pergola will show you that too, which was really, really, really funny. No, I'm kidding, Weston. I try to be those things. I know sometimes I don't make it, but I try to be those things. Peter said he typically only watches the reviews from the core crew of the Dice Tower and sought out this channel after seeing the Age of Atlantis review. What he prefers is honesty from the presenter and not a clearly biased or advertisement style video. Now that's a whole nother can of worms. First of all, I'm very grateful to have you here. That Age of Atlantis review was one of my favorite reviews that I've ever done on the channel. I also really the Voidfall one that actually spurred this conversation was one that I put a ton of work into, and I'm really proud of it. But I just didn't like the game that much, and so it just made it a difficult video to do. Anyways, the whole topic of honesty from the presenter and not just being a commercial is hard. It's really hard. And I can tell you, well, actually, I don't think I'm going to name a name or the game, but I did a preview video not too long ago. You might be able to infer from context. And I wasn't glowingly loving of the game. I was honest with the game. Actually, it wasn't a preview, it was a review. And I mentioned that, I had some challenges with it, but it's a good game, and maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. And I never heard anything back from the designer on that review. I even made a casual comment about it. And they made no response, basically almost kind of like it just didn't happen. And I felt bad because they probably didn't like the video, but I also know that I was honest. But then I don't know if that guy's ever going to work with me again. and there's a thing, right? Like with a channel like this, for it to succeed, I can't talk about the same game every week. Granted, I know a couple channels that are just doing gangbusters off of nothing but TI4, which is crazy. But that's a game you can probably get away with it, right? Anyway, so it's this push and pull, right? Like, do I just say great things about the game so I can have more games to talk about, or do I, talk about games, but then I got to pay for them all myself? Like, and granted, don't get me wrong, I'm not getting like a flood of new games in every day, at least for free. I'm paying for most of the stuff that you've ever seen. So anyways, it's tough, right? I think the Asmodee deal that I have is the best one because I'm just doing videos for Asmodee. Asmodee doesn't own these games. They didn't produce these games. They didn't design these games. They're just a distributor here in the U.S. And I've got to deal with them. They send me stuff. I review it. I get a couple of weeks to do that. I can only have so many games at a time, yada, 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 whatever. And it just works out well. I've never had any pushback from them. I've never had any, well, you didn't like this review, so we're not going to send you one. I don't even know if they watch the stuff. I think they just verify that I did, in fact, make content about it. So anyways, that's been a pretty nice gig. But anyways, I got off topic there. I appreciate you joining us, Peter. Jeremy Johnson said he prefers shorter and more concise videos with plenty of footage of the game, adding that the algorithm plays a huge part in viewership, though he wishes it didn't. And I think we can all agree with that. The algorithm, thou art a cruel mistress. And I don't know how it works. I don't know that anyone really quite truly knows how it works. I've watched some videos where people think that even just naming the file a certain way before you upload it to YouTube might have an effect on the algorithm, but who knows? And I agree. I think that, even I've tried to kind of pull the reviews back in length a little bit, although it depends on the complexity of the game, right? A game like Pergola does not need a 30-minute review. A game like Voidfall, yeah, you could probably easily do that or more. So, it's just kind of hit or miss. But yeah, I definitely, one of the big things I have pushed for, especially with the new camera, I actually just today was trying to figure out how to just stretch as much color out of that camera and its sensor to make these games just pop off the table for you, the audience. It's a little bit difficult with the Ratchet. Like a lot of times I'm shooting my Ratchet pictures, the games that I'll be talking about here in a few minutes. It's a cell phone picture. It's someone's living room. The lighting is terrible. I try to do the best I can and try to edit and post as much as I can. I hate it when I get glare and such on those, but I can't be like, well, can you turn off those lights and let me unscrew this light bulb and can you pull those blinds down? Hey, that's the shot. I just can't do that. But with my reviews, it's all out, right? I blacken this room completely. I control the lighting in every way possible, and I try to make the games just look incredible, unless they look terrible, and then I try to be very clear about how terrible they look. Anyways, so again, I appreciate all this feedback. I don't really have any things to respond here myself. I've kind of been doing that throughout this, so I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the support. As always, I'm not going anywhere. No complaints. I'm going to keep trying to grow this channel. I got some plans coming up here for the fall. I'm going to kind of pull away, I think, a little bit from the Kickstarter stuff and just review some games, just have some fun. So we'll see how that goes. Let's go ahead and tell you about some games I played recently. Holy crap, here we go. I have, 9 games to talk about here this week. I briefly mentioned this. I think I briefly mentioned it at the top of the show. I went to Baltimore this past weekend. My good high school buddy, Doug Hager, has a couple friends up in the Baltimore area. And they get together every once in a while, play a lot of stuff. They do a lot of cooperative games. They've also, I'd say they're a bit more into that sort of dungeon crawl and some of the sort of darker themes than I tend to be. But we had a fun time this weekend. I played with them a couple of times, and I've always enjoyed going up there, with the exception of the drive. But we'll get back to that a little bit later. Anyways, first game I'll talk about, I've talked about it a bunch. I'll talk about it at least one more time, is Bombusters, the new Spiel des Jahres winner. The reason I'm bringing this one up is because I found out over the weekend that I've been playing it wrong. I have messed up the rules for the 3-player game. In the 3-player game, one player gets 2 racks of tiles with these wires on them. And I misread it. I read that you're supposed to take however many tiles that you should have for each rack, I'd say 10 or 11 each, and then arrange it all the way across 1 to 12. You don't do that. You pull out 10 or 11 tiles for the one, 10 or 11 tiles for the other, however many tiles you're supposed to get, and arrange them 1 to 12 individually, and you have 2 racks out in front of you. And then only one of them do you get to put a clue on to help the rest of your team. And because of that, the walkie-talkie equipment in here never made any sense. And so I finally posted out on the website, and I said, can someone explain this to me like I'm 5? Tell me what I'm doing wrong. And of course, I got a lot of, well, this isn't hard. This is easy to understand. Why aren't you understanding it? And finally, someone said, well, it sounds like you're doing organizing the racks wrong. It's supposed to be 2 individual arrangements of the tiles. And I was like, that makes sense. So I was really, really bummed to learn that. I told my family about it when I got home, and I was joking with my wife. I said, the moment our daughter hears that, she's going to go, I don't want to be the captain anymore. And I explained to her the next day, and she goes, okay, I don't want to be the captain anymore. And my wife and I just laughed. Still a phenomenal game. We have not played it yet with the correct rules. I wanted to do that over the weekend. I was just too busy with some filming. But anyways, we'll get back to it. Still a great game. Bombusters. Okay, up next, last week, my wife and I played Big Sur, a little box about Big Sur. And this is a game about building a highway, the Big Sur Highway across, I believe it's partially coastal California. I know it's in California. I don't actually know the highway physically out in California, I'll be honest with you. But this is a game where you're laying out these cards. It's all card-based, and you've got stretches of highway, and each card has 2 different biomes or environments. So you'll have trees, mountains, beach, farms, and like flowers. I'm pretty sure those are the 5. What you're trying to do is complete stretches of highway, and a stretch consists of 3 of the same icon across 2 or more cards. So you can have an icon that has, say, 2 coast, and then a card next to it with 1 coast, and that is 3 coast across 2 cards. That is a stretch of coastal highway. You can have as many coast in a row as you want, but adding more to it, though, it will give you more score, because you're going to score the mileage of every card in that stretch, and each card has a different length of highway. You can also add these landmarks to each of your stretches, but only 1 landmark per stretch. And so you actually want to try and split those stretches into relatively smaller segments, not too small that then they're not a stretch, but just enough cards that then you can get a landmark in, because those landmarks may give you extra points. They may give you some extra ease with constructing the highway, which is the other thing I kind of need to mention, is how do you build these sections of highway? So each card has a cost, and in the bottom left corner, it may tell you it needs 1 steel and 1 hard hat and 1 wood. The back of all these cards have those symbols present. So if you have the card in your hand and you have the materials, you just discard those cards to then build the card that you want. Now, I will say this, and I've probably mentioned this before, I don't really like these kinds of games where you're shedding cards to pay for other cards. Force shuffle, there's a whole mechanism of force shuffle. I want to play this card, it costs 5 cards, but I really want these other 3 cards, so I got to draw 3 more cards to then be able to discard the 5, but then I drew 3 more cards. Oh crap, now I actually really want 2 of these cards, and I got to draw cards again. And for me, that sort of weight that determination of which cards are valuable enough to hold on to and which can I live with parting with is really, really difficult for me. And I think there's a little bit of like an attention deficit kind of a thing, maybe a hoarder thing. I don't know where I'm going. No, I don't want to lose these cards. I must have all my shinies. So that was difficult, but I really liked the way that it actually worked here. For one thing, each card being different in terms of which symbols are on it versus which materials it's worth meant that it was pretty easy for me to draft some cards that I knew I wasn't going to need, because you already know what the cards give you and what materials they provide, like what symbols of the stretches of highway and what construction icons they're worth. All that information is visible on the front of the card in the market. And so you don't have that angst of going, okay, well, I need this material. Oh, crap, now I want the card. Like, you know what you're getting. And it's easier to sort of say, well, I'm going to take this card because I know I don't want it for the symbols. I just want it for its construction, or vice versa. Also, the cards that you discard. So when you spend those cards as materials to build a highway, the most recent card that you discarded actually becomes a recycle bin. And so you can use your face down discard pile, just the top symbol, once per turn as a symbol that you would need for construction. So you can kind of say, well, hey, I used that last time. I'm going to use it again to get this card built. And then you also get some of these landscape or landmark cards that come out that may give you other things. I had one that said, treat the symbol of this card beneath it as if it's a wild once per turn. You can use it for whatever you want to use it for. I had another card that said you can use your opponent's discard pile once per turn as an extra recycle bin. And so I think my last turn of the game, I didn't discard any cards, and I actually built 2 cards, because you can also get cards into your highway that provide 1 resource per turn. The only problem that we really had with this was that once our stretches of highway got big enough, we were expanding across this round table that we have in our kitchen, and all of a sudden we realized, oh crap, like we're running out of space and we got to shift the whole highway over. That was a little bit of an annoyance, but minor. But then we got to the point where we couldn't remember which resources we had already used, because you can use your discard pile once. I could use my opponent's discard pile once. I've got a couple of cards in front of me that provide a resource, but only once per turn. And there's no way to kind of mark what you've already used. And so I've already thought about trying to 3D print just some little markers. It's okay, I've used this, I've used that, I've used this. I finished my turn. I just wipe all those markers off and I'm ready for my next turn. Other than that, we actually had a lot of fun with this. I really enjoyed it. The art is beautiful. I love some of the cars that are represented in the artwork of the game. This was probably the most approachable kind of like card shedding, card spending games I've ever played. And of course, I love the theme, California. That's where I'm from. A really fun game. I'm glad I picked this one up. Big Sur. Okay, let's see. This next one's very different in terms of complexity and scale. Daniel came over and we played Star Trek Captain's Chair. Now, Daniel has taken a big shining in solo gaming lately. His wife's just not a big fan of gaming, and he just doesn't get to come over as much as he would like to. And so he's been really picking up solo gaming as just a kind of way to get better at gaming. And I totally can relate to that, understand that, and I'm happy he's able to do that. He's played this solo now a couple of times, and he was like, yeah, I'd love to check it out competitively. And then whomped my ass in this game, which I really wasn't surprised. And I kind of realized as we were playing that I was very excited to have him come over. I was very excited to hang out and play a game with him. As I told him, I said, my heart was totally into gaming. My mind was not. For whatever reason, I was so preoccupied last week when we played this that I just wasn't focused, and I played terribly. It's a neat game. I've talked about this a couple times. It's based on the Imperium card games, and so it's a deck builder with just decks of cards all over the place. You have a sort of a small hand of cards that whenever you would reshuffle your deck, you add one of these stronger cards into it. You have another set of cards you actually have to pay for, but not until that first set of cards is exhausted. You, of course, have your hand and your discard and your active area, and then you have in this game this idea of cards that are deployed. And so if cards are deployed in front of you, then they have certain things that you can trigger. But if you just play it on the table as sort of a one-time thing, then all the other stuff on that card can't be used. This action table, as they refer to it. There's icons all over the damn place. You've got these missions related to your captain, and so I had a mission that said I was Benjamin Sisko from Deep Space Nine. I know I've talked about that captain before, but I had to have a certain number of locations controlled And then I think I had to have a number of ships on the board or something like that. I can't quite recall. It took me forever to get that going because to take a location, I had to use a bunch of my ships. Cisco is not very good at just getting people at a location, away teams. He has to actually send ships. But you only get maybe 2 ships throughout the whole game, so I had to go and buy a bunch of ships. Ships are very difficult for me to get. It was just a struggle to get into his mission to get that going. Then his second mission was he had to have a whole bunch of Bajorans out. Well, I had inadvertently logged my Bajoran card, which meant it was tucked underneath my captain cards. Basically means it's out of the game. You've trashed it from your deck. You still get to score it at the end of the game, but it's no longer available to you, and there's almost no way to pull a card back from that stack. And so, like I said, I really, really struggled. And we talked about it afterwards, and I told him about how when I first read about this game, I really was excited that it was going to take the space of the Star Trek collectible card game I used to play back in high school with my good buddy Doug. And it just didn't, because in that game, you would deploy a ship, you would tuck your crew members and equipment under that ship, artifacts, whatever you wanted, and you literally fly that ship along space and do missions with the people and the equipment and stuff that you had stuck on that ship. And in this game, it's completely different. You're tucking cards and things underneath that ship just to get them out of the way. It's a way to literally temporarily pull cards out of your deck so you cycle your deck faster, so you're getting into those other development decks quicker. And that, again, it's difficult for me because I go, well, hey, I don't want to lose this card. I need this card back. I don't know how long it's going to sit there. I don't know when I'm going to be able to pull it back. Like, again, it's that whole sort of loss aversion for me and not being able to weigh the consequences or the value of keeping that card available versus getting it out of the way for a bit and hopefully getting it back when I need it. And I don't know the game that well. Each of these captains do play quite differently. And it's like, I need to do the same thing, right? I got to play this game multiple times solo with all the ample free time that I have to figure out how that works. So I'm glad I got to play it. I do still think it's interesting. It's just not the experience that I want out of this game. It does not give me, it is not quintessential Star Trek. It is not Star Trek in a box. It is only slightly faithful to that IP. It's a good strategy game. It's very, very thinky. There's ways of manipulating things that aren't readily evident to you. And in fact, Daniel had played it enough that he was giving me tips on here's what you should be doing. And, that's the strength of this card. And I'm like, oh, geez, yeah, I understand. But I don't know. I don't understand how to use it yet. It's just not Star Trek. It's art deep in a lot of ways. Some of the systems are there, but it's just not in the way that I really want them to be there. And so it's a game I struggle with because I want to love it. I'm going to buy the expansion. Of course I am. It's got Kirk. It's already been announced. I don't know when it's actually coming out. I got to just figure it out somehow. And I just don't know how I'm going to do that. Anyways, it's Captain's Chair. Okay, next. This game's, I'll try and make this quick. Sharks. I mentioned this. I got this on my travels the past week or so. My daughter saw this on a used game bin and had to have it. And so I told her, well, then we are playing it. It's kind of meant to be this informational, educational game. I don't really know if that comes through, to be honest with you. But the idea of this is that you are a shark. There are, I believe, 5 or 6 different sharks in the game. But it's, I think, only is it actually a 5? No, it's only a 4-player game. So you have a couple of extra sharks that you can play as. And that's nice. I like that. You're putting out this grid of tiles in front of you, and then you put a little shark meeple out there, and you're moving along this grid of ocean tiles, and you're just trying to eat food. The food comes out in a couple of different varieties, and there's manta rays and fish and turtles and like all the stuff. Like all of these tiles have little art on them. They show you what they are. They tell you the species name. That's all great. But all you really care about is this really tiny little symbol on the card that's a blue fish or like a green octopus or a purple ray or something like that, because you've got scoring cards. You've got your own deck of cards for each shark, and you're going to always have 3 of those cards visible in front of you, and the card's going to say, eat green octopus and purple rays. It may have like those 2 symbols on it. And so for every set of those two things that you have in the stomach of your shark, when you choose to score that card, you'll be able to score. So it may say 2 points per set, and if you have 2 sets, 2 of each, I got 4 points. And you discard a card, and you put a new one out. You can score as many or as few of the cards on your turn as you want. And so what we kind of, at first you feel incentivized to say, well, let me try and get as many turtles and rays or whatever in my shark stomach as I can, right? And I can score this card and pick up 16 points. But if I just go ahead and score whatever I have, okay, I get 2 points, fine. I get another card out, well, that card might be worth 6 points right now. Or maybe I can just get one more thing and make it worth 6 points. And so I kind of quickly realized that I think the strength of it is just score every card that you can. If you can at least get a point or two off of it, get a point or two off it and go to the next card. Because there's also each of these marine life tiles that you're eating have like small, medium, and large sizes. And so same thing, it may say score 2 points for every large or 3 points for every set of medium and small, whatever. And so again, the more that you can just run through that engine and just run through all those scoring cards, grab every single point you can, I kind of rocketed up the score chart on this. Now there's also a boat. The boat sits out on this grid. At the end of every player's turn, they pull a little tile out. The tile tells them what direction the boat moves in. Actually gives them 2 options they can either pick, or if they can't use one of those as an option, they just move it anywhere they want. And the boat leaves trash behind. So if the boat leaves a spot, it leaves a little bag of trash, a little token on the board. And if your shark swims over a trash token, even if it's heading somewhere else, it eats the trash. The trash goes in your stomach, and you can't get rid of it easily. Basically, you're going to play until you have 10 things in your stomach, and then the game's over for you. And it triggers the end game for everybody. So sometimes you're trying to go to places where you can get rid of that trash. You're trying to avoid the trash. Except for that when my daughter and I played this, even though we played on a smaller grid for only 2 players, the boat just kind of got stuck. Literally, the way that you're sitting at the table dictates how you orient the tile. And so the way that we were sitting, the boat just stayed in the very top row of tiles. I think at one point it came down and laid a tile down, and then there was actually an action that you can take on your turn to wipe the tiles off the map. If you have at least 4 trash tokens, you get an extra point because you're cleaning the ocean, etc. And it was fine. It was really, really, really lightweight, not surprising. It didn't really feel like it had a lot of decision space. It kind of felt like everything that I needed was right there. I mean, it literally was like a shark buffet, right? I'm going to go over here and get the small fish I need, score that card, and go over here and grab the manta ray I need, score that card, and go over here and do this, score that card. And then I was on my next turn saying, I was going to try and get as many points as I can. It's very, very simple. It was kind of nice that it tried to do this sciencey thing, but it doesn't incentivize you to really learn anything from those cards. It's if you choose to sit there and read them, okay, great, but you're mostly just going for the symbols. It was fine. Art direction, very, very basic. I don't think it's AI art, thankfully, but it's just very, very simple illustrations. Just not exciting. She was glad she got to play it. I mean, she was excited to see a lot of those creatures and such. I just don't see us coming back to the table very often, but we did try it. Sharks. Okay, this one's going to be a challenge. Yeah. So, my wife and I broke out Cretaceous Rails. I mentioned that I picked this up because one of my viewers, Stephen Chow, mentioned this as being his favorite game that has come out this year. It's dinosaurs and, sort of building a dinosaur park. I thought, sounds great. Let's try it out. I'm going to be honest. I bounced really, really hard off of this game. This is rated out on BGG of like an 8.3. And I was actually really surprised that a lot of the reviews of this game are not from people who have only reviewed this game. I was expecting to see that. Wasn't the case. People are saying it's like their favorite game of the year. And I do not know why. So the idea behind this is that you're building this map. You got this map in front of you. It's sort of pre-made for your player count. You can slightly change it, but generally it's going to be the same just based on number of players. And then trying to expand a train route out that takes you past these big, chunky dinosaur meeples, these little tiny but well-detailed miniatures of people out in this island. And then you've got these little palm trees that kind of sit all over the place, and they represent jungle. each tile is either going to have, each tile is going to have a jungle token on it pretty much. And then usually a dinosaur meeple, big, like I said, big chunky miniature of these dinosaurs. And you may have a volcano. There's a couple of cabins all over the place where the tourists kind of start out at. And then you've got a home base. All of you are next to each other at one end of the map. And you're putting out these plastic trains that look exactly like Ticket to Ride trains. And you're just trying to build this path that wanders across this jungle. You've got a 4x4 action grid. And you have these 4 little pawns. On your turn, you put a pawn between 2 of the action tiles, and you take both of those actions in any order that you want. Actions are very simple. Putting down some more train tokens to continue your path, and they lay in between the hexes. So any hex that you're next to or basically pointing, you're adjacent to. Like one train car is technically adjacent to 4 hexes, the one in each side, in front of and behind. So you put down more train sections. You can remove one of those jungle tokens. You can remove a dinosaur. You can remove a miniature, a person, a tourist, as long as they're somewhere adjacent to any of your train pieces. You also have another train above your player board. These are represented by little cardboard pieces sort of printed on their sides. And as you're taking these things, the dinosaurs, the people, the jungle tokens, you're putting them on your train cars. You only start off with 2 of these. You can get up to as many as 6. When your train is full, you have to then basically waste one of your 2 actions to empty your train. Essentially, the train comes home, empties its contents, and you go and do the other action. Or vice versa. You can do the action and then empty the train. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else important as far as the actions go before I talk about. Then the last thing you're doing is you are building your resort. Now, the resort is represented by these cards that show at the top maybe a dinosaur, maybe one of those jungle tokens, maybe a tourist, just pictures. And on the bottom has some slightly cryptic iconography that then tells you what that card lets you do. And at the very bottom of that card, in very tiny little print that's kind of blends in with the background of the card, it tells you how that card is going to affect your endgame scoring. And there's almost kind of a Concordia aspect to it. So if I buy this card, it may let me do this during the game, but it's also going to give me this little boost to my, maybe every one of my train cars on the main board is going to be worth an extra half a point, or every train car in my cardboard, train line, whatever you want to call it, is going to be worth an extra point. These cards get built in 3 levels, literally 3 rows of cards. You can go as wide as you want. But then it starts to get funky with the actions. Like, okay, well, you can build as many cards as you want, but they have to be in the same level. So you have to build your level 1 before you can build level 2 before you build level 3, but you can't have a card sitting over top of nothing. So you can build 1 card on level 1, but if you want to build 2 cards on level 2, you can't. You got to wait until you build at least 1 more card on level 1, which is an entire action, right? So you're trying to build as much stuff as you can, but the cost of those things are in the stuff that you're collecting from the island board. You may have to literally spend tourists, spend jungle tokens, spend dinosaurs to build these cards. Now, when the dinosaurs, when any of that stuff gets spent, they go on the card, which quickly gave us the challenge of covering up the cards to the point that me looking across the table, I couldn't even see what the icons were on my wife's cards because they were eclipsed by these dinosaur tokens. But then what I also quickly realized is that these cards are heavily imbalanced in a way that just completely broke the game for me. And I will say that not everyone agrees with me on this, and that's fine. But the whole idea behind these jungle tokens and the way that this board works is that the idea is that it's a dense jungle. It's a thick, overgrown island that somehow has campers and tourists already on it. And yet you're picking up those tourists to then ride your train line to look at all the dinosaurs that they were sitting right next to. Whatever. But if there's a jungle token in the hex with a dinosaur, then they can't see the dinosaur. There's too much jungle in the way. So you have to first collect the jungle tokens, then pick up the people so they can see the dinosaurs. Okay, fine. Except for that, first I got to use an action to get the train line there. Then I got to use another action to clean the tree out. I at some point got to use an action to get the tree off the train because eventually I got to pick the person up so they can then see that one dinosaur. Well, maybe I wanted to let them see 2 dinosaurs. Okay, well, I got to pick 2 trees up. Now the train's full. Now I got to waste an action to empty the train. Now I got to use another action to go and pick the person up. Yay, you got to see 2 dinosaurs. And for some reason, if you pass by a volcano, that's also worth a point of a dinosaur to them. That was weird too. My wife got a card that said that when she picked up people, they could see through trees, and they didn't care if there were trees in the way when they were looking at dinosaurs. And so she had a train line that passed 3 purple dinosaurs, or pink. I think it was pink. And she goes, okay, I'm going to pick up a pink person. They're going to see all 3 of those dinosaurs and the one volcano. I get 4, it's not actually points, but she got 4 movement on a reputation track. And then later on, for every pink dinosaur that she had in the resort that she later claimed, was then worth the value of that reputation track, which goes up to like 35 points. So in one action, she can jump up 4 spaces on that track. For me, I needed 3 actions, right? Because I had to first clear the trees, then pick up the person, probably waste the action to get the trees unloaded so I had somewhere to put the person, etc. And to me, the action efficiency that she got out of that one card was so unbelievably powerful that she actually doubled my score at the end of the game. Now, I was trying really hard to get that same type of card, but in our playthrough at only 2 players, you don't run through that deck of cards very often, and another one just never showed up. I was also trying to get to be able to add more trains to my sort of my pickup card. Well, I don't know what to call it, but the tiles that you're actually putting those pieces on. I was trying to add more trains to it, and I just couldn't. None of the cards that came out let you do it without some otherwise hefty costs, which I eventually did have to pay. I played 2 cards out. It actually made me lose ratings so I can get 2 more cards out, but I'd waited so long to do it that it just wasn't cost effective, and I hardly ever got to utilize them. And like I said, I just got clobbered in the score because I couldn't pick up the same action efficiency because the cards simply never came out into the display. And it felt incredibly lopsided. The theme just did not work for me really at all. The cards that you're playing don't look like a resort. Like I said, these pieces are so big and so chunky, they kind of look out of place. This idea of, well, there's already people on the island, and then I'm taking them from the island to then enjoy the island and go into that didn't make any sense. And I just didn't enjoy this. And even after the first round or 2, my wife was like, yeah, I'm not impressed. And for my wife to say that, that's saying something. So I don't know. I'm really, really torn on this. I do want to try it out again. I've already been cleared to do a review for this on the Dice Tower, but I do want to try to see if I can make some more sense out of it. Maybe I do know that, for example, 1 or 2 of the cards that I built really just didn't do anything for me. At first I thought that since you have 4 turns across 4 rounds, for giving you a total of 16 actions, and then actually each action is technically 2 actions, so you get 32 things to do. I thought, we're going to have like these huge resorts, we're going to have all this stuff going on, and I think I finished with like 30 points, like nothing. My wife had 58 or something like that. Maybe it was 40 and 80. I don't remember. But like I said, she had almost twice my score. And I just felt like I had nothing. I had like all of maybe 4 cards in my tableau. I had 1 dinosaur, 2 tourists, a bunch of wood tokens, and that was it. Like I just never really got anything going. So I need to give it another shot, see if I can kind of start to figure out the ebb and flow of this a little bit better. Maybe my opinion of it will improve. But I just was not really impressed with Cretaceous Rails. I got through it. Okay. Then I went to my buddy's place. We played a couple of games. I only have 1 or 2 of these. So first we played Shadows over at Camelot. I meant to look up the year that this game came out. I forgot to do it. This game's been out for a while. I'll flash the year up here on the screen. But this is a cooperative game where you are playing as the Knights of the Round Table in Camelot, and you're trying to protect the castle from all these different invading and attacking forces. And I know that there's a lot of lore to it, and I don't remember all the names. I apologize. But you had a kind of this large board. You had the Knights of the Round Table sort of representing the castle in one corner. You had these two other opposing forces in the adjacent corners. On the far end corner, you had some other sort of army that was attacking. You then had a sideboard over here, actually two different sideboards. I think one was like Lancelot or something that you were attacking as, or whatever. Over here you had the Excalibur sword, which was actually a little bit of a tug of war. So the sword had a little piece, and it could go away from you or come towards you. And if it got all the way to one shore or the other, it would either be lost or gained by the Knights of the Round Table. On the other end of the board was the Holy Grail, and it was sort of the same thing. It was a tug of war, but by playing cards. And if you got the card completely, the row of cards completely filled by your cards or enemy cards, then you gained or lost the Holy Grail accordingly. The gameplay of it was simple. You draw a card. You basically do something for the evil forces, either drawing one of their cards or adding a siege engine, a catapult, basically in front of the castle, or you can just voluntarily lose one of your starting life points, which is only 4. So you couldn't do that very often. And then you got to do whatever you wanted to do, one action. And the action was either draw cards if you're at Camelot, move to a location, play a card at the location that you're in. You could also discard like 3 of the same card to gain a life point back. And that was basically it. And the thing that really stood off to us right away was that you had very, very little action efficiency yourself. Like literally your entire turn could be do something bad to us, and then I move over here. And that's it. A few things. So the gentleman that we were playing with, it was his copy of the game. We were playing at his house. Nice guy, liked the guy. Not a great rules teacher. He kind of struggled to teach us the flow of the game. He struggled to kind of give us the specifics on how the different systems worked. And so we spent forever just trying to clarify, well, what happens over there? Well, what does this really mean? How does that thing work? What does this symbol mean? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We did finally figure it out. But by then, we had all kind of branched off and gone our separate ways. I had a wide variety of cards, and I thought, well, I can kind of be like the pinch hitter. I can come over here and drop some grail cards. I can come over here. So there's this idea, those battles that you had in the corner, you actually had to play a card. You had to play 5 cards, 1 through 5, in numerical order. You had to play the 1, then the 2, then the 3, etc. And so I was like, well, I've got like a 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll go and I'll get that started, and then I'll come over here and I'll work on the Grail. I got a couple of cards I didn't really need, so I'll go over and I'll work on Excalibur. And then I realized, well, I can't, because I'm going to waste 4 or 5 actions just moving around the board. What we quickly realized is that we should have grouped up. Like, okay, you 3 go over here and finish the Grail. You 2 go over there and deal with that fight. We're just going to accept that we're going to lose this fight. And then there's the traitor element. You hand out cards at the beginning of the game. Each person gets a card that says if you're loyal or a traitor to the throne. And guess what? King Arthur was a traitor. We each kind of had like our own special goals. And the guy who was playing King Arthur was able to basically trade cards with people no matter where you were across the board. And so we were actually trying to kind of feed him cards that then he could help another player to get the stuff they needed, so we didn't have to keep moving around. And when he was going to have to then pass a card to another player that was going to help them finally win this fight, he outed himself as the traitor. He basically leaves the board, and now on his turn, he is doubling down on helping the bad guys. And we survived 2 rounds of that, and we finally lost after nearly 3 hours of what's supposed to be a 60 to 90 minute game. Suffice to say, I didn't enjoy this at all. And we were talking a bit afterwards, in fact, talking too long. I was ready to be done with this game. But we were talking about how, we definitely we didn't get the point. We didn't sort of see that we were supposed to be teaming up and working together. We kind of thought we could divide and conquer. Not the case. The traitor took what was already a very, very difficult game and made it nearly impossible. But honestly, we were going to lose that game long before the traitor really started to work against us. He started off kind of just playing along because it wasn't really getting a lot done anyways. And then when we finally kind of saw our path to getting something accomplished, he took that opportunity to go ahead and drive the spike, which was smart. He played it well, right? And he won the game as a result. But I don't think any of us really enjoyed that one. Shadows over at Camelot. We then played another game of Bombusters. I won't go into it. I found that missions 2 and 4 are a good way to kind of slingshot someone into that game. We then attempted the exam, mission 8, and we failed it, which I just kind of thought was funny because my family's the only group that passed the exam, although now I realize we passed it with the wrong rules, so I told my family we're going to try that one again. Up next, we played Cosmic Encounter, another fairly old game, a game that has always been on my radar of something I wanted to play. I was actually very excited to check this out. Didn't care for this one at all either, but let me explain why. Because they even explained that, this didn't play out normally. So, Cosmic Encounter, every player gets 5 planets, little round, just cardboard discs. And on each planet, you get 4 of these little stacked up tokens, little like flying saucer ships. And then each player gets a faction card, which gives them a unique ability. And then you get a hand of cards that do a variety of things, which I say they do a variety of things. All of mine were combat cards except for one. I had one like kind of a tactics card, and everything else was just combat. We played with another expansion, and there's a ton of expansions for this game. I don't know any of them, as obviously this is my first time I've ever played it. But we played an expansion that gave us these, I think they were called, they weren't upgrade cards, they were like reward cards, I think they were called. A unique card back. And the idea was that the way the game plays, let me back up. The way the game plays is on your turn, you draw a card from another deck, and that card literally tells you must attack this player. And it's going to be either any of the other players around or you. You can attack your own planets if someone else has sort of taken over that planet. You can try to liberate it from them. Other than that, okay, I'm supposed to attack the yellow player. So I point this little arrow at them. I put as many ships on that arrow as I want, up to 4. So I'm going to attack you with a power of 4. I then get to invite other players around the table to assist me in attacking the yellow player. The yellow player, and none of them answer, that's the important part. The yellow player then decides if they want to invite anyone to help them defend. And only after that does every player around the table choose if they're going to join the attacker, join the defender, or sit this one out. If you join on either side, you might have cards that you can play to weigh in, but other than that, all you're going to do is, again, add any number of ships up to 4, either to the arrow for the attack or next to the defending planet to assist. With this expansion, if you chose to help defend the planet, and that planet won, that player won their defense, then you would get to draw one of these reward cards for every ship that you sent into battle. And these cards were insanely powerful. And one of the players picked up on that very quickly, started jumping in on every battle he could as an assist, and ended up with just a huge hand of these cards, which then he used for the next several rounds to clean our clocks. Now, he wasn't really getting into many fights. He would just kind of like, again, he would join in on an attack or he would join in on an assist and then play cards that just like drastically threw the influence in whichever side he was on. To the point that then, interestingly enough, my power for my faction said that I could assist either side of any battle whether or not I was invited. I was a parasite, which was hilarious. And I could just go, I'm going to help out. I'm going to get in on this. Now, every fight that I jumped in on, I lost. Every single one of them. Until that guy got that huge deck of cards. And then I just started going wherever he had gone. I would join on whichever side he was on. Eventually, one other player and I started to finally get involved in some other battles, started to get ourselves seated on some other planets. You have to have your ships on 5 other planets besides your own to win the game. And if 2 players achieve that at the same time, they win as a tie. That's what happened. It was a really, really, really weird game. And they explained that this reward deck, which they had never played before, really just threw the game's axis off tilt. Nothing really felt right because they weren't really grasping what it did. They were all just willy-nilly inviting people to help them. And what they didn't realize is that by asking someone to help you defend, you're potentially throwing some very, very powerful cards at them. And so only towards the end of the game did people finally start going, no, I don't want anyone to help me. I'm going to try and do this on my own. So they wouldn't make, King make other players. But it still just felt to me, it was definitely one of those random chaos type of games. Not my favorite kind of a thing. I told you I had one tactics card, right? The one turn that I had that I got to attack a player, and here's my 4 ships. I had a really good card in my hand, and then everyone teamed up to defend. Everyone teamed up against me. And I had one card that I dropped that said, I can just choose who has to get out of the fight. And so I chose everyone on the defense to just piss off and leave. Except for then someone played the Exploding Kittens Nope card equivalent that negated my card. I then played my strong combat card. The guy with the strong deck threw a bunch of stuff out that canceled my strong, powerful card, and I still lost the damn fight. And at that point, I was like, nope, I'm done with this. Let's just wrap this up, because that kind of stuff pisses me off to no end. To go in I just don't have much. I've got just a little bit. I'm going to try and time it just right. And then someone just goes, nah, I just cancel you. And forget about it. Everything you just had was a complete waste. You wasted your turn. There was no sense in even playing. Why am I sitting here at the table? And I just hate that in board games. So I'm really glad I got to try this. And I was told that it wasn't the optimum playthrough, that it wasn't sort of the pure experience of Cosmic Encounter. But I still think that that's just ridiculous. Right now, maybe if I could play a base game without that stupid reward deck, because that's the one that caused me the most problem, maybe it'd be all right. But I am glad I got to check it out. I had a hunch it wasn't going to be for me, but I am really glad I got to play this somewhat iconic game. Last game that we played while we were there, I broke out Rock Hard 1977. I've talked about this one a bunch. I won't go into it. I love teaching this. I got to, sort of get into character and teach this game again. In fact, my good buddy Doug won this. We all had a lot of fun with it. Just a great game to joke about. I still got to watch someone pull the sugar-free candy card, which is unfortunately a waste of an action, 3 times in a row. And in fact, even the third time, he's like, all right, here, I'm going to try this again. And I shuffled the deck and I said, here, pick one. Surely you'll be fine. It was like a 1 out of 8 chance. And he still picked the sugar-free card. We laughed so hard. I felt bad for him. He actually, I think, still made like 2nd or 3rd place out of the 5 of us. And I never played it at 5. And I will say that at 5, it was tricky to get stuff done. We did still, I think all of us still cracked 50 points. But it seemed a lot harder to get to things. There's still only one opportunity at 5 players to get the record deal, which isn't vital in the game, but the income that it provides is pretty helpful. I actually was the first to get the record deal, but then it took me forever to get to upgrade my record deal, and the money that was providing wasn't enough later in the game to kind of keep me going. So it was, I didn't love it at 5. I think that 3, maybe 4 is a pretty good spot. I think 4 is good because you get to use the 4 or 5 player board, which gives you some extra spaces to do stuff, but still less players to kind of clog it up. But anyways, just a fun game, a lot of fun. Rock Hard 77. Hey, I did it. I got through the Weekly Ratchet episode number 69. Now, again, real quick, there's not going to be an episode coming out this weekend. The weekend of the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, whatever. I'll be getting ready to go to GenCon. If you're going to GenCon, say, hey, let me know. I'd love to meet up with some folks. I'm really going to try this year to sort of explore more of the convention side of things. So the first time I went there, I was just shopaholic. I really don't plan on buying a lot of stuff. In fact, I've been going through the sort of pre-release notes on Board Game Geek for GenCon and really not seeing anything that jumped out at me as, oh my gosh, I got to buy this game. So I'm going to try and go and play some more stuff. I'm going to try and just meet some more people. I'm going to try and sit through some more demos. I'm going to try and just be in the moment and experience some stuff. I will be volunteering at the Dice Tower booth just a couple times. I'm honestly not on the schedule that much, so I won't be there that often. I'll probably duck back in there from time to time, just kind of get some breathing room because that place gets packed. I will be there with my good friends Katie and Greg, the Meeple Society. Really looking forward to seeing them and getting to play some games. Anyways, that's Gen Con. I am really looking forward to it. Hoping to get some more reviews out here in the next week. Please go and check those out. And other than that, I will see you after Gen Con for episode number 70. Okay, question of the week on this 69th episode of the Weekly Ratchet. Let's have a little fun. How about your 69th favorite board? No, that's a terrible idea. How about if you could take 2 board games and invert them? No, never mind. No, let's not do that. Hey, I know. Over the weekend, I set an alarm to get up at 4:30 in the morning to drive to Baltimore and play board games. And as I was sitting there in my dark house, trying to go to the bathroom and get changed and all that kind of stuff, I thought, why in the hell am I doing this? So question of the week for episode number 70 is, what is the craziest thing you have done in the name of board games? At least something that, same thing. You kind of sat there going, what am I doing? That will be the question of the week. I'm looking forward to hearing your answers. Let's have some fun with this one. Folks, thanks for watching. As always, enjoy the next week or so. I will see you after Gen Con. Hopefully I'll see some of you at Gen Con. And until then, have fun. Cheers.